No, it's not that I don't like her. She's extremely likable. To a fault. It's like she was created to be especially likable. She's expertly curated and aesthetically perfect at all times. She has this overwhelming positivity about her that I can't stand. It's like she doesn't realize that boundless optimism isn't serving anybody.
Does everything have to be in service of something else?
No, I know what you're saying. In comparison to her, I feel pessimistic, and to me, I'm being realistic.
What have you got going on the rest of the week?
Nothing. I'll work, probably, and for fun, maybe I'll rewatch The Terror for a third time.
What's that?
It's this historical TV show, drama, horror, about the failed expedition to find the Northwest Passage.
What is it about this story that makes you rewatch it so many times?
The acting's really great. The characters are good. There's this one character, Hickey, that I guess I'm weirdly obsessed with.
What do you like about him?
He's charming and canonically gay and a cannibal.
Well, that checks a lot of boxes for you. He sounds a lot like a character you brought up last week.
Who? Colonel Ives from Ravenous?
No, I was thinking of Hannibal.
No, I think that Hannibal is pan or bi.
What is it about these characters that you admire?
Admire is a very strong word.
Would you like to tell me more about these stories so I could get a better handle on these characters that you enjoy?
No, not really. If you're concerned about spoilers, we could just put a pin in this conversation and get back to it after you've watched them.
You could do that. Yeah. Same time next week.
Yeah, that works for me.
Humor me a little. Have you ever been curious about the practice of cannibalism? Of eating human meat?
I'm a vegetarian.
But not a vegan?
No, not a vegan. Alright, send me the links to the shows and I'll see you next week. You watched all of them? In a week?
Larger feats have been accomplished in less time.
I'm impressed with your dedication, Doctor.
No, it was an exhilarating experience. I feel closer to understanding what it is that attracted you to these stories.
Oh, how's that?
How familiar are you with the history of anthropophagy?
Anthropophagy?
While doing research, I found the origins of the word cannibal comes from Columbus's mispronunciation of Carib as cannib. He then used this term, cannibal, to denote savagery and barbaric practices so that Spain could dominate with impunity.
So it was derogatory.
Arguably so.
I'll remember that for future reference.
Historians largely agree that the people Spaniards deemed cannibals weren't evidence to be anthropophagists in practice. There is, however, a rich human tradition of using the meat and bones of our fellow man as sustenance and religious rituals.
People eat the body of Christ every Sunday, that kind of thing.
One has to wonder how his body would have really tasted. Skulls used as goblets, initiation rituals for soldiers, from England 600,000 years ago all the way to recent Tibetan monks consuming the flesh of Brahmin ascetics. Transcendence of the human body after death through the digestion of the living held a significant place in our shared history.
I don't see it as transcendent.
Don't you?
It's exploitative.
In the same way that all meat-eating is, or do you differentiate between man and beast?
It's not about whether or not I differentiate.
You see it as morally wrong.
I'm not... I'm sorry. Are you advocating for cannibalism?
Pharaoh is he who lives on the being of every god, who eats their entrails. Pharaoh is he who eats men and lives on gods.
That is exactly my point.
The pyramid texts?
No, the god part. There's a reason that we look at the Donner Party as a tragedy, but Hannibal Lecter is a monster. Consuming human flesh not out of survival needs, but for desire. You watched all 3 stories and your takeaway isn't that it was morally reprehensible?
You're referring to the Wendigo.
Partially, sure. Yes, metaphorically speaking, the correlation is apt. A monster that is born out of insatiable greed and hunger.
Do you have trouble with hunger?
It's been suggested.
I didn't mean your own, though it's interesting that that's where your mind went.
No, I have trouble with people who don't realize that they're full while millions are starving.
You feel that satisfaction should be reached when survival needs are met?
That's how I try to live. I try to live within my means. I don't take more than what I need.
Are all your vegetables picked by people fairly paid, grown with water that is ethically sourced?
No, I'm not... I'm not saying I'm perfect. It's impossible to be perfect.
Then who are you to determine what are the needs for people who may have more access than you deem morally responsible?
I'm no one. I can't decide that for anyone. The point of a Wendigo isn't whether or not the average person is living beyond their means. It's about wealth consuming the laboring class. It's about people who take lands from people who are basically defenseless and completely ruin it. Hannibal Lecter doesn't kill people who are his equals. He sees them as pigs. They're usually service workers who didn't provide him with an adequate business experience. I mean, he's not at a lack for anything.
So not eat the rude, but eat the rich.
The Northwest Passage in the Terror, that was a trade route for the great empire of Britain. Manifest Destiny, westward expansion, that was Americans taking the land of people they deemed inconsequential to their search to amass more and more wealth. The gold rush. Slave owners used to sell the bodies of their slaves as meat. Hell, Jeffrey Dahmer murdering and eating young black and brown men, it's all the same. People who seek to maintain a social hierarchy that benefits them at the expense, fatally, of others who they deem beneath them. That should be the ultimate taboo. Not anthropophagy directly, not necessarily, but greed.
What are your thoughts on the case of Armin Meiwes?
Who?
In 2001, Armin Meiwes, with full knowledge and consent of Bernd Brands, ate his flesh. He even tried to feed some of it to Brands while he was still alive, but it was raw and too chewy. In this instance, I would consider the men to feel as if they are equals. Would you not agree? It could even be argued this occurrence was romantic.
This really wasn't the reaction I was expecting from you, Doctor.
Do you agree?
It's hard for me to.
Is it just as hard for you not to? Earlier you brought up a comic book, Beastars.
I see where you're going with this now.
In the book Beastars, Louis, the deer, offers his foot to be eaten by Legoshi so that he may win a battle against a much larger and stronger animal. Considering how devouring flesh in this universe can be a metaphor for sexual violence, do you not consider this consensual act to be the most intimate in the story?
You think I'm into vor.
Are you?
I get sick watching mukbangs. I can't stand the sound.
So the concept elicits no positive reactions. In your years as a sex worker, were you ever called upon to engage in full fetish with your customers?
Never.
So you can't be entirely certain that this concept does not attract you in any way?
I'm sure.
I'd like for you to consider it just a little bit more, even if only for my amusement. Vor is often likened to BDSM in that you are offering your body and self to fulfill a fantasy which is often deemed taboo and dangerous. It can be a way to connect with your partner on a level beyond what we commonly deem socially acceptable. It is often the most vulnerable you can be. The idea of becoming close enough to someone you care about, someone you admire, so that you are physically within them and at their mercy. The joining of one's self with another. There is a safety in that intimacy, satisfying the desires of someone more powerful than you.
I don't see myself as powerless.
And yet, the name you chose for yourself. Mouse. An animal that is prey.
I didn't name myself for the animal.
For a computer mouse, then?
No, though I don't mind that correlation nearly as much.
Why a mouse?
Yes, to some extent, I want to be seen as small, delicate. A mouse is hidden. Its power isn't reliant on physical strength, but cunning.
Sometimes we use the word cunning to mean manipulative.
I am manipulative, aren't you?
You don't see manipulation as bad.
I don't see it as good or bad. It's natural.
And yet you tend to admire villains who you yourself label bad people.
There's that word again. Admire.
What would you prefer to call it if not admiration?
Is attraction always admiration?
Attraction without admiration is usually shallowly rooted. Your attachment to villainous characters in dark storylines doesn't seem to be surface level. Do you feel empathy for them? Do you see a potential for good in these characters?
I can empathize with them. I can empathize with anyone. I've cried when I've seen my abuser sad. Unlike manipulation, empathy isn't really a survival skill. It's kept me in more dangerous situations than I'd like to admit when I knew better. I wouldn't say that makes me see good in them.
Do you see a potential for evil in yourself?
I say thank you to cars that let me pass at a crosswalk.
Could it be said that your endeavors to foster positivity come from a fear of seeing the potential of darkness in yourself? Or do you wish that you had those valuable aspects of the people you condemn?
Is this a therapy session? I thought that I was making a video about some shows that I like.
This is your time and your video. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
I don't love these stories for the horrors that they portray. It's not about the violence or the anthropophagy. You take that away and it's about people their interactions. Cannibalism is a transactional relationship. Do you agree? I've chased plenty of people who only saw me as a means of transaction. We portray ourselves in ways we know will achieve desirable outcomes. For a lot of people, kindness is only useful if they get something in return.
In this opinion, it would seem that all relationships to you involve an element of consumption.
Don't they? I consume my friend Alice's company as the only form of social interaction I can get, despite the fact that I can't stand how I feel about myself when I'm around her. You consume our interaction. I don't know what you could possibly get from it. We tell ourselves that we have to play this game as a means of survival. But the body knows when it's consuming poison, even if it tastes like birthday cake.
How do you tell the poison from the precious?
No, you can't. We're always dressing up our monsters in tailored suits. Trying to be close to people is way too risky because what if they see the real me? Everything, every single relationship gets poisoned by seduction. And seduction is way less sexy in real life than it ever is in our imagination. It never comes from a healthy place. It doesn't go to one either.
Is seduction that important to you?
Extremely. But only the right kind.
But you feel that you can't find the right kind of seduction from real people.
In real people, it would never be healthy either. I've adopted it for myself. I make up for the lack of magnetism I perceive in people so that I can have it as part of my reality.
Even if it means being dishonest with them about who you are and your intentions.
Especially then.
Then it makes sense why you tend to favor characters who can delight in their own darkness.
I don't favor them. I long for them. I want to lose the freedom to keep pretending. I want to have my mask forcibly taken from me. More than anything, I don't want to be in control of the outcome.
You long for complete submission to a dominant force. To give up all of your power.
No, I want to fight for it. And I want to lose.
That fight would be very intimate for someone who tries to control every emotion and every reaction they experience and portray to others. It would render you extremely vulnerable.
Yes.
Are you capable of that level of trust? To allow yourself to be seen and connect? Would you let yourself be consumed so that the body may decide whether you are horrible or supper?
I don't know anymore.
We are out of time. I have a task for you. Does your building allow pets? I want you to foster an animal. You don't have to think of it as a long-term adoption unless that idea appeals to you. I want you to be open to the concept of sharing your time and space with another living creature, one whose only profits from you are survival.
A snail?
Why, what's wrong with the snail?
There's nothing wrong with it. A snail can't show you affection.
I don't need for it to show me affection to care about it.
Did I see a teacup?
I thought he might like a place to hide.
I detect a double meaning there.
Why are you on the floor?
My back hurts.
And why are you here?
I was worried about you.
I don't need you to worry about me.
Of course. You're the only human being in history to be completely devoid of all desires. Have you talked to anybody in the last month?
The doctor and I have been having conversations.
Yeah, you're a perfect doctor.
You don't like them.
Oh no, they're perfectly lovely. They have that whole charismatic villain thing that you love so much.
Not everybody who's charismatic is a villain.
Of course not. I'm not saying that. I'm perfectly charming and I'm not an evil villain. Somehow, though, that's always the type that you go for. Like, have they been helping you at all? Do you feel more capable? More attractive? More stable? Has there been any improvement at all?
Maybe improvement isn't my end goal.
They creep me out. You creep me out when you talk about them. It's like neither of you knows how to talk like a real person.
Do you need something, Alice?
I'm just trying to get a read on where you two stand with each other.
We know where we stand with each other. Isn't that enough?
You know what this looks like from the outside, right?
No, I don't. I'm inside.
It looks like you're making yourself more miserable, more distant, and hard to love. I could be there for you. If you would let me.
One of these days you're gonna let me inside. When she reached out to you, how did this make you feel? I didn't feel anything, I just reacted. With fear or distrust? Aren't those the same thing? She was trying to show you love. Is that a feeling you have in any measurable way for her? We're familiar. Calling it love seems saccharine. Tell me how you feel about love. Some lazy psychiatry, doctor. Low-hanging fruit? I expect that fruit is on a very high branch. Difficult to reach, so is love. Can't say I've ever experienced it. An interesting place to start. How do you feel about love? Let's start there. You formed connections to people in the past, and yet you say that you have not experienced love because all of these relationships carried an element of harm with them. Harm you did not consent to. There's something so foreign about relationships. Like wearing somebody else's clothes. I never connected to the concept. You have forged connections in the past, created relationships with imaginary people. I attach myself to the concepts of imaginary characters. I wouldn't say that those were relationships. I'm referring to the people you've dated. Oh, well, this should be interesting. Please, doctor, proceed. You are angry with me for saying so. Angry? No. Would you agree that in your wish to see your partners as they could be instead of as they are, that you were creating relationships based on imagination? I was playing the role I thought they wanted me to play. I was hoping we were reading off of the same script. I realize now that that was a false foundation. I wouldn't call my connection to them imaginary. What would you prefer to call it? Hopeful, and yet your hope remained unfulfilled, while you still try to fulfill their fantasies of you. Isn't that my job? You feel it is your purpose to fulfill the concepts others have of who you are, isn't it? Working food service, I had to pretend I was happy to be there for 8 to 10 hours a day, $7.50 an hour. If I played that role well enough, I would get to go home and have dinner that night. As a cam model, I had to be 20 different fantasy women every single day. Not only sexually interested, but with a prescribed appetite. I had to be emotionally available enough to be their therapist and friend. On Twitter, I am trying to maintain this sense of openness and vulnerability that I can't deliver on. Everything's just a different role. Friends, families, lovers, strangers, they're all different parts.
What this sounds like to me is that there are a lot of people who would be interested in knowing you. You want me to be friends with the strangers on Twitter. Not all the Twitter strangers, though I think it's unlikely you will make new connections from people you already know.
No, they're only interested in the false perception of me that I have sold to them.
Tell me about this false mouse you portray.
They're likable, funny, charming, intelligent, happy. They're not tearing themselves to shreds every day.
Tell me what being truly honest and open about yourself would look like to you.
Rejection.
And if rejection weren't part of the equation?
Violence.
Against yourself or against others?
Against myself.
You perceive being honest with others as a loss of control over the outcome of a situation. It makes you feel unsafe.
I have the impression that who I am at my core, I have trouble believing there's something good there. I have enough evidence now to understand that I am intrinsically unlovable. Self-isolation is a lot easier than constant self-management.
You are concerned about harming others. Is this because of how you perceive yourself reacting to danger? Or is this because of what others have told you about yourself? That you are unlovable, a monster?
Isn't the ability to empathize with monsters just a step away from being one yourself?
It depends on how you act upon this empathy. Your wish to be close to somebody can override all dark intentions. With the right person, these barriers can fall away, revealing the person underneath them. I think what you empathize with in people like Will Graham, in Lieutenant Boyd, even in Hickey, is the wish to be known and loved despite your perceived monstrosity, despite your darkness.
Not loved despite it, loved for it.
I want to perform an exercise with you. Are you familiar with guided meditation?
I'm not very good at it.
I am not worried about how well you can perform. Are you willing to try this with me? Close your eyes. Feel the heaviness in your limbs. Imagine yourself in a safe and relaxing place. Safe to relax completely. No matter how deep you go, my voice will go with you. Where are you?
The woods.
Do you see anything in front of you?
Nothing, there's nothing here.
What do you feel?
Loneliness.
What's wrong? What do you see? Whose blood is it? It's mine. It's mine. It has to be mine. Whose blood is it, mouse? What do you feel now?
Fear.
You are not misunderstood here. The part you play with me is only yourself. You understand?
Is she?
If she is, we killed her together. No, this is imaginary. This isn't real. Would you be afraid if this was reality?
Afraid?
I want you to answer me honestly. Do you feel safe right now?
I feel more vulnerable than I ever have been.
What does this vulnerability make you feel?
Understood.
You are.
That's quite the spread, Doctor. I appreciate you making everything vegetarian, but raw vegetables?
Pinzimonio, an Italian dish celebrating the highest quality vegetables with the highest quality olive oil in their pure, raw state. Served with a Cape gooseberry mostarda, a very tart fruit that over time is rendered sweet and a little spicy.
I detect a double meaning there. What's the entree? You know better than to ask. We shall have a toast. To us. No, my dear. To you.
You are waking, calm, waking in a quiet room, safe. Would you like to tell me what you saw? How did it feel?
It was beautiful.